You know, I just don't get it. You donate a pint of blood and you're a hero, but you donate 5 gallons and people get upset. Where did you get this from? I'm calling the police. They're just jealous of my infallible altruism. Though I am a little curious, where did you get that much blood? Ah, you mean the Little Mermaid? No, I didn't. What were we just talking about? Huh. The Little Mermaid is Disney's latest bastardization of one of their classic animated films, and just like most of Disney's attempts of recreating their movies in a new medium, I have no reason to think it won't fail to capture what made the original so great. And you may be thinking, well hey, that's not a fair assessment of a movie you haven't seen, shouldn't you at least give it a chance? No. Despite Disney's previous track record with these films, I don't deny that there's a possibility that it could have an excellent story and good acting. However, my biggest gripe with these films lies in something different. It seems to be an ever-growing opinion that Disney's collection of live-action remakes are not only inferior to the originals, but are also cynically made, simply shallow products that prey on your nostalgia, and it's an opinion I happen to agree with. I believe that this approach to adapting a film leads to a complete disregard for how the medium of hand-drawn animation made these classics so special, and why I and many others simply can't connect with these new films. To put it more precisely, this annoying trend of adapting an animated film into a live-action one often destroys the visual appeal of the original, and in some cases, this change of style can even become detrimental to the story itself. Sort of like how my change of barber can be detrimental to my looks. Oh hey, that's actually pretty— Ow! Although visual appeal is subjective, I think there's something to be said about trying to recreate characters and elements that were originally designed for hand-drawn animation, and this couldn't be more apparent than in Disney's 2019 Lion King remake. When The Lion King first released in 1994, it got near unanimous praise for its music, story, and animation, along with becoming Disney's most successful film at the time. Not only was The Lion King the highest-grossing film of that year, but also the second highest-grossing film of all time, behind 1993's Jurassic Park. Due to its overwhelming success, it's not surprising that it would get several direct-to-DVD sequels and spin-off shows, but they all more or less kept the same visual style across the board. This is because when you have a film with exclusively animals, it would be in its best interest to not fundamentally change the visual style of the franchise to one where none of the characters can make facial expressions, right? Wrong. At least according to Jon Favreau, who wanted to make the film feel like a nature documentary for some reason.
Spoke to the people at Disney and pitched them on a vision of how we could present this in a way that felt more in the style of a documentary.
Oh, you know, the film genre well known for musicals about animals of all species getting along under a benevolent monarchy. As a consequence of the strange and arbitrary decision, every scene that was adapted from the original Lion King was changed for the worse, because when you remove the ability for your characters to emote, not only do you have a harder time connecting with these characters, but very often it can be hard to tell what the characters are feeling in any given moment. The live-action Lady and the Tramp suffers from the same issue. Like, you really have to ask yourself how inspired the production of this film was when the main idea behind it was, oh, how about we take the Disney animated classic and make it look like Marmaduke? Did no one have the forethought that when you're going to adapt one of the most recognizable scenes in all of animation, it's probably going to look stiff and awkward when you're using real-looking animals? You know, I never thought this arrangement of words were ever going to come out of my mouth, but I think— Hey, what do you want for dinner? Hold on, Theo, give me 1 second. I think I prefer watching cartoon dogs kissing. Like, I don't think enough people really consider how integral acting is as a part of animation, but it really is. Animators not only need to have a good idea as to what the characters are feeling, but to also effectively communicate those feelings through drawing body language and facial expression.
He's thinking, I'll show you to your room. You can actually see where he makes the decision, and it's all done very, very subtle. And I wanted it to be all done with his eyes. You see him thinking, and then he looks at her and goes, okay, I'll show you to your room. And he walks off. When
you strip away the expressiveness of these characters, you lose much of the emotional impact the scenes once had, and it kind of misses the point of the original. It's almost as if we forgot the reason people anthropomorphize animals is because they're not usually very expressive to begin with. Hello. I know it's starting to sound trite, but I don't think I can express enough how important this is when you're adapting one of the most emotionally resonant films of a generation. But I guess if there's one thing I can kinda give the remake props for, is that the film's visually consistent, albeit consistently bland. The same, however, cannot be said about the 2019 live-action remake of Aladdin. In the original Aladdin, Genie stands out as a funny, high-energy character the moment he's introduced, which was not only strongly supported by the voice talent and improvised lines of Robin Williams, but also by Genie's exaggerated movements. Despite this, Genie doesn't feel out of place because he matches the rest of the film's visual style. Genie can squash and stretch because all the other characters can too. That's the benefit of working in an animated medium. If we ignore the fact that Will Smith doesn't have a fraction of the charisma that Robin Williams had, this Genie doesn't look like he's actually there, and when he squashes and stretches, he can't get away with it as easily as the original. It's a kind of visual dissonance that a lot of live-action films are affected by, whereas 2D animation almost never runs into this issue. Besides a few cases of dated CG every so often, hand-drawn animation usually has the benefit of being much more cohesive, and isn't nearly at risk of coming across as dated. But with the new Aladdin, even some of the elements that don't necessarily need to be implemented with CG are, and I wouldn't say it does the film any favors. Pirates of the Caribbean came out over 15 years ago, and it was able to use a real parrot and monkey to great success, and it's way more endearing than whatever this is. This isn't that related to my main point, but I wasn't a fan of Will Smith's performance either. There was this idea floating around that Will Smith was doing his own unique take on the character, but if his unique take was doing an awkward, unfunny version of Robin Williams, then yeah, I think he really nailed it. If they really wanted to do a unique take on Genie, I think it would have been cool if they brought in another comedian to play the part and offer his own comedic style to the role, like how Robin Williams originally did.
No, I'm afraid I just blew myself.
Beyond that, translating an animated film to live action can negatively impact the visual storytelling as well, such as in the new Beauty and the Beast. In the 1991 film, Beast is clearly shown to be part animal. He's lost much of his humanity, and that's communicated in several ways, such as how he crawls around, his aggressive demeanor, the way he eats his food, his loss of literacy, and he literally looks like an animal.
A gorilla-like brow, but a buffalo-like head. There's kind of a buffalo sadness to him. But then the mane should be like the soft mane of a lion, but the body like the body of a bear. Wolf legs, wolf tail.
In the 2017 live-action film, a lot of this is lost, and now he just looks like an angry guy covered in hair, which negatively affects the film as a whole. In the original, there were several scenes where he would crawl on all fours like a rabid dog, but in the new one, he doesn't do that. That part of his character is completely lost. And if you want to be fair, you could say that this Beast's new live-action design would look kind of awkward doing that. And yeah, fine, I guess, but then there are other scenes where you could argue the same thing, but they keep it in anyway. For example, they keep the scene where Beast eats his meal like an animal, but because he doesn't look nearly as animalistic, it feels far more stilted and performative. Like, this is clearly a guy with opposable thumbs. He can use a spoon. Did he have opposable thumbs in the original? Ah, I guess he does. Still, though.
Unstoppable.
A repeating theme throughout this video is how much worse the designs have gotten with these newer films, which is no doubt the case for this one as well. However, one benefit this movie has, say over Favreau's Lion King, is that your two main characters can actually act with their face, which allows them to say a lot without talking at all. Or at least, that should be the case. Let's compare two more scenes.
He may be dying, and he's all alone.
Then you must go to him. I release you. You're no longer my prisoner.
In the original, it holds on Beast's face for a long time, so there's a lot you can draw out of it. He looks at the wilting rose, contemplating his decision, and what it would mean if he let Belle go. Then he looks up in reluctant acceptance, having decided what he'll do. When he finally speaks, you can see immeasurable pain on his face, knowing that he's chosen to remain a beast forever for the sake of someone else. And why would he do that?
Because I love her.
Beast sacrificed the only chance to be human again for perhaps the only person in the world who could see past his outward appearance and show compassion toward him, something he wouldn't have ever done for others before. By the way, Beauty and the Beast is a great movie and you should definitely watch it if you somehow haven't already. Now let's see how the live-action film handled this scene.
What are they doing to him? He's in trouble.
Then you must go to him. You must go to him. No time to waste.
In the remake, it's really hard to read any emotion from Beast. As a matter of fact, he's turned away from the camera when he realizes what's going on, and immediately after hearing the news, he urges Belle to help her father. No hesitation or inner turmoil. This is supposed to be the most important scene of the movie, where Beast's sole motivation throughout the film Breaking the spell on himself and his friends is directly challenged, and he has to make the hardest decision of his life. But the movie doesn't treat it this way. Instead, they decided to take this really cool character moment of the original and backload it to a cheesy musical number that bluntly tells you the lesson he learned and how sad he is that Belle is gone. And it has horrible auto-tune. Am I being too cynical? I don't think I am. But just to be sure, I think I'm going to bring in a special guest. This is the immortal Orb of Decay. Due to his unbiased perspective toward entertainment media, or really anything for that matter, I think he'll provide useful insight on the quality of these films.
Then I came flying here for you to see and hear what I found. Remember the swamp? Remember my song in the swamp when I was like, wah, take the wah, wah, take the.
So I'll admit, I have a biased affinity toward the Disney animated classics, which may make me sound a little unfair. But that doesn't mean I think it's impossible to adapt an animated film to live action without ruining the elements of the original. I think if you absolutely had to make a live-action reboot of an animated film, you could go one of two ways. One way is to take the fantasy elements of your story and bend them to fit into your universe by any means necessary, even if that means having no choice but to remove certain parts of your film altogether. You could also do this by using really good practical effects. Or, if you have enough time, a team of competent CG artists, and more money than God, you can smartly integrate CGI into your world without it feeling jarring. The other way you could go is to fully embrace the stylistic contrast between your real world and fantasy elements. Am I saying The Little Mermaid would have worked better in the visual style of Who Framed Roger Rabbit? I don't know. Probably not. But what I do know is that doing this weird middle ground between realism and trying to do what the animated film did just leaves you with a weird uncanny valley, sort of a worst of both worlds. It leaves you with character designs that kinda resemble those gross, overly detailed renderings of cartoon characters, like if you type in realistic Homer Simpson into Google Images. So yeah, do I think it's possible to make a good live-action remake of an animated film? Yeah. Do I think Disney is currently capable of doing so? No. Between the lack of expressiveness, visual inconsistency, visual storytelling being lost in translation, and simply how ugly these films look, it appears that Disney has no interest in tastefully adapting their legacy films, and have shown no sign of changing that anytime soon. On another note, it appears that Disney is starting to run out of legacy properties to adapt, and is now starting to cannibalize its newer films. Eventually, we may see this trend of live-action adaptations slow down, and perhaps one day, we'll see the innovation that made us adore these films in the first place. Probably not. Well, that's that. Oh wait, I remember what we were talking about. Where did you manage to get 5 gallons of human blood?